The following is the video solution from JSDT Solutions. Question 2 says, a company conducted research among its employees on what percentage of their monthly salary was spent on fuel in a particular month. The data is represented in the ogive, the cumulative frequency graph below. Okay, so this is our data represented. And question 2.1 says, how many people are employed at this company? Okay, so the thing about the cumulative frequency graph is that it is made by adding the frequencies in each class. So when you keep adding the frequencies, that is why these keep increasing, that cumulative frequency. When you get to the end, that last point that we have will show you the total frequency. And the total frequency would be the total number of people or the total number of data points that we have in the study. In this case, it's people. So that would be a total of 60 people. So there are 60 employees in this company. Okay, 60 people employed. Moving on to the next question. Question 2.2 says, write down the modal class of the data. So the modal class, this is the mode, but the thing is our data has been recorded in classes, okay, in groups. So the mode is the number or the value that appears the most. In this case, the mode would be looked at as the class with the highest frequency, because the frequency tells you how many of that class you have. So we can see that the maximum spent was about 35%, okay, on fuel. So this is how we can look at this. You see, from 5 to 10, this is a class of its own. And for us to find out, so we can say x is greater than 5, but less than or equal to 10, since the maximum is exactly at 35. So to find that frequency, here is what we do. We would take this, right, whatever this is, and you subtract it by the previous frequency of that data point. The reason why is because these are cumulative frequencies. They've been added. They are added frequencies. So looking at this, this is 0. This is roughly about 5. So that will be 5, right? And then looking at this, so it means that between where x is greater than 5 but less than or equal to 10, you have a frequency of about 5. Remember, we're looking for the highest frequency. And then in this scenario over here, you would take that, which looks to be about 12, right? Minus the previous frequency, which was about, this was a 5-ish. So that would be like a frequency of 7, okay? And so on. So where you'll find the highest frequency is where you're going to notice the biggest jump between your data points. You see that between this and this, it's not that big of a jump. Between this and the next jump, not that big. But look at these two. Look at that. That would be the biggest jump. So this is where we will find that frequency. Notice how to find the frequency of this class where x is greater than 5 but less than or equal to 10. We knew to look at this point. We said that frequency minus this frequency. So to find that biggest jump, that highest frequency, it's going to lie here between these two data points. And so that is where x is greater than 20 but less than or equal to 25. Okay, and that would be our modal class. The biggest frequency lies here where x is greater than 20 but less than or equal to 25. And that is our answer. Question 2.3 says, how many employees spent more than 22.5% of their monthly salary on fuel? Okay, so let's look at this data. 22.5, we're just going to have to find out exactly where that is first. Okay, so from the way these are moving, they are going from 0 to 5. Then there's a middle here and then 10. So the middle of 5 and 10 would be 7.5. And then that would be 12.5. Okay, so they're moving in 2.5 in intervals of 2.5. Okay, so 22.5 would be here. This is 22.5. And we're looking for the employees who spent more than 22.5. So here's how we find them. We go to 22.5% and we run up to the ogive. And once we hit the ogive, and you just have to try to make it as accurate as possible. Once you hit the ogive, it looks about here, we're going to run to the left and then see what number this is. These ones are counting in 2, so that's 30. 32, 34. So here's how we find the people who spent more than 22.5%. Everybody from 34 to lower than this, they spent exactly 22.5 or less than 22.5. Everybody above spent more than 22.5. Okay, so that's thereby after 34. Okay, these are the people who spent more than that. So how we find them is we know that there's a maximum of 60 employees. So we'll say the people who spent more than this because they start from above 34, this will be 60 minus 34. And then we'll find out that number. So 60 minus 34 is equal to 26. So it's 26 employees that spent more than 22.5% of their salary on fuel. And that is our answer. Question 2.4 says, an employee spends 2,400 Rand of his salary on fuel in that particular month. Determine the monthly salary, okay, what is total salary, of this employee if he spends 7% of his salary on fuel. So this is the money he spent on fuel. This is the percentage. So they're telling us that 2,400 Rand represents 7% of his salary. So this represents 7%. Okay, here is how we can find out the total salary. You know that we're saying 7%, meaning 7 out of 100. That is 7 over the total salary. So 7 over 100. And so we are saying that this is equal to 2,400 over whatever his total salary is. And this is really what this looks like. Okay, so if you transpose the x and then take that over, what you're going to end up getting is, see, if you take this out of the denominator, it's going to move to the numerator. If you move this over, the numerator and denominator will just switch places because you're really just dividing both hand sides by this number, okay? And if you're dividing by a fraction, you're going to use tip and times, meaning whatever this is, and then you're going to tip and times, meaning multiply by 100 over 7. You tip this and you times. So our equation would just simply become x is equal to, and we'll say 2,400 multiplied by 100 over 7. And that would give us the total salary of this employee. And this is 34,285.71 cents. And that is the employee's total salary. Question 2.5 says, the monthly salaries of the employees remains constant. So salaries remains constant. And the number of liters of fuel used each month, the fuel used remains constant as well, also remains constant. If the fuel price increases from 21 Rand 43 cents per liter to 22 Rand 79 cents at the beginning of the next month, how will the above ogive change? So looking at the ogive, what happens is the monthly salaries, that does not increase. Okay. And then their consumption also doesn't increase. They don't change how much fuel they use every month. That stays exactly the same. The only thing that increases is the price of fuel. So the study is still the 60 people. Nothing changes there. However, the percentage of their salary spent on fuel now, that's going to change because their salary did not change. That stayed exactly the same. But because the fuel price increased, they're going to spend more than they spent last month because that increased, but their salary stayed exactly the same. So what it will do is it will cause these percentages to increase as well. And when those percentages increase, because they're on the x-axis, it's going to cause a shift to the right, okay? They're going to increase like 5%. Somebody who spent 5%, for example, wouldn't spend 5. They will spend more than that, okay? So all of these data points, they will just be shifted to the right. So it will cause the ogive itself to simply shift to the right. And that's what we can tell them. So this change will cause the ogive to shift to the right. And that is it for question 2.